Sergers just beg to have decorative threads put through the loopers. You can do through just the upper looper, or you can do both the loopers. So for something like this, I only did it in the upper looper because nobody's going to see the underneath side, just the way that that has been done. You can do it for a wide 3-thread, you can do it for flat lock stitching, and you definitely can do it for rolled hems. But just because you put a decorative thread in that's thicker doesn't mean the serger knows what to do with it. So I'm going to show you the little tricks for adjusting your tension. So I actually have the serger currently set up for a wide 3-thread. The left needle is in. The right needle has been removed, so that's why I don't have any thread up here. And let's go ahead and do something like a wide decorative 3-thread on the outside. So I only need this thread to sit in the upper looper. Now, how big of decorative threads are we talking about? We're talking about floss. You can do, this one's one of my favorites. It's Razzle Dazzle from Ricky Timms, and it's great. It says for bobbin work, couching, and serger. Another fun one I like to use is Pearl Crown Rayon. It's a very soft and shiny, a little slippery. You kind of need to know what you're doing. And even these are, you're not going to put this on real delicate fabric, so you need something a little beefier. So when you're beefing up the edge of something, it's on something that can support it. So nothing too wimpy, otherwise the weight of the thread will actually kind of drag that fabric down. So with this serger, the goal would be to tie on our thread. So I'm going to just add it to my pink. I'm going to clip the pink thread and place this in position on the back and then tie that overhand knot. So we do have a video on how to tie the threads on. And I just noticed that this thread got caught in the little catch. So I'm going to uncatch it, flip it over, make sure that's not a problem. I could also put a little thread cap on it, but I know that spool's not going to move. So tying our threads on, we're going to let both the tails dangle, and then I'm going to tie them with a overhand knot, kind of the same knot you might tie a balloon with, and give that a good pull because that knot's got to go through all those little tubes. Now, why am I tying it on versus just letting the air tubes pull it through? It is actually a little thick for just that pump to shoot it through. So if you have unthreaded it, thread it quickly back with regular thread, tie on with your new thread, and let's just give this a little, I lifted up the presser foot so it's really easy to pull, and this is the pink thread, so finding the pink thread, and I'll just kind of pull it through by itself, and then kind of catching it, like the knot's going to get caught right there, so you're just going to help it in through the tensions and through the little guides, and I can feel, oh, it's getting caught behind my machine, there we go, until I see the knot. Now, did you see how quick that knot went through that upper looper? So those loopers could accommodate up to 1/8 of an inch ribbon, and we're talking like a silk ribbon, not like just a craft ribbon that's kind of stiff. Now, before we get going, you got to think, like, how is a serger going to handle this decorative thread? So if you were a serger, would you need a little bit more breathing room where this decorative thread went through? Yes. So immediately take that down to a number that's less than normal. So even down to 1 or 2, and that's going to give it just some resistance, but not a lot. Now to kind of counterbalance that, depending on after I sew my sample, I'll probably end up increasing, letting the lower looper have a little bit more increase just to give it that nice tight look. Lengthening out your stitch length, so if you want to start somewhere at that 3.5, again, depending on how thick your decorative thread is, you don't really want to pile it up and then not let it actually flow through. So let's just do a quick little sample run here, and we'll look at the tensions. And here's another trick I'll do. I'll usually just, instead of running it around, I'll clip my threads. And that way I don't waste my decorative thread as I go. Now you see why I love that Razzle Dazzle thread. So I've loosened it enough, and I can kind of see that the lower looper thread, that's that lime green thread on the lower looper, is kind of coming over the edge. So what I can do, that was what we were talking about, like counterbalancing it, is tightening up that lower looper just a little bit, and then that way it can kind of help pull it back so it it sits just nicely against the edge. I'm loving how everything else is nice and secure. I've got a nice straight line back here. That does mean that if this was to be opened up, I'm going to have the seam that is not smiling at me. And then also too, if you want that a little bit more filled in, we're going to shorten this stitch length. So let's do that. We'll shorten the stitch length and tighten up. Let's tighten up the lower looper by 2 numbers. See the difference? I love that this comes right out to the edge. So that would be the goal for this look. And then as I was shortening the stitch length, getting it closer and closer until maybe you like that kind of filled in, kind of a satin stitch look on the edge of fabric. You know what this would be perfect on? Like a baby blanket, 2 layers of flannel, go all the way around it with decorative threads. Done. Super easy to do. So don't be afraid to try out some decorative threads. Remember, we have some Bluprint recommended serger classes in links below this YouTube video. That way you can check out more options of where you would use these fabulous stitches that your Pfaff Admire Air 5000 can stitch.